corporate companies, they pay less than you and I as people. And so when you realize that, then you understand things are significantly out of whack. My platform is simple. I'm not used to carrying these, okay? So last night we were in Oklahoma, so I spoke from a kind of old school on a bench, and people were as far out as the parking lot. So, you know, I'm used to getting it out there if I have to, but my platform is about making Mississippi first. And to me, Mississippi first is really a dream or a vision about a house or a building or anything that essentially can only be well or last long if it has a good foundation. If you go to this church and you see a crack going through the wall, the crack is in the wall, but it really is a reflection of your foundation. And so with a bad foundation, your building will continue to be slanted, cracked, or essentially just collapse. And I think here in Mississippi, we've known a lot about collapsing and cracks and things of that nature. So how do we fix it? How do we stop being last in every quality of life indicator there is, from our health, from our education, home ownership, family structure? All those things are in disarray. Now, one thing I've come to the conclusion is that a bad economy will destroy a family. A man feels less than if he can't provide enough for his family or can't provide in there. So what happens is the sister tries to carry the buck. She wants to work too, but who's going to keep the kids? So we have to have more programs that, one, engage the student longer after school. Two, make sure that those parents have opportunities to be skillfully trained to be competitive in this economy. We're talking about a new economy where skills and technical training is kind of retro, right? It's old school, where our parents do trades or grandparents do trades. Some of them didn't even have beyond 6th or 8th grade education, but they own homes. They provided for their children. No government assistance. And so how is it now that children can go through school for 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, 15 years, still can't get a job? I want to ask the two young men here what they want to do. Do y'all plan on leaving here when y'all get out of school? It's okay. I probably presume and say yes. And that's not you all. That's a lot of kids. Almost 2 generations now of families who have done that same thing. They graduate and want to leave. And what's worse now, you can go to Atlanta, you can go to Dallas, you can go to Nashville, you can go to all these large cities around us, and plenty of us are there, building up those cities, building up their money. And we look around here, and we're without. And a large part of that is also not having enough young, trained, skilled people. Yes. Because that's long-term investment. And so we have to commit to doing that. One, starting from the womb. We have to make sure these children get all the resources that they need. Kids are now entering public school unable to read. Yes. And so what happens is they get slapped with a standardized test by 3rd grade that says this child will be in prison or unemployed by 18. If they make it that long without already having gone through the juvenile system. And so how do we correct that? Well, one, we pick the self-esteem of that child up so that they don't think that being a bad student or being a disruptive student is cool, because no one told them that they were smart. No one told them that they had talent and skill. And now that we have children now creating apps and beats and all kind of things that otherwise they would have gotten in trouble for, or someone told them they weren't being constructive, people are making millions doing that. And so one, we got to quit beating up kids for learning what they love. We have to encourage that. Encourage them to understand how their hobbies may be $1 million practice. And so we have to quit discouraging those things because we don't understand. We have to make sure that we humble ourselves and realize that none of us in this room were born with touchscreens. But this new generation, except for this young man back here, they come out touching phones and learning how to break down codes and navigating things and downloading apps. That's reality for them. Right. That's their new wooden blocks and holes and circles. They don't even think about that. That's too premature. They can do it in 3D now, touching the screen and flip it different ways, because that's the way they come in the world now, understanding. And so what are we doing to facilitate that opportunity, facilitate them being ahead? That's right. What research center exists here that challenges these children on how to fix the problems of their own neighborhoods, their own highways, their own communities? There is none. So they don't even care. Because are we even telling them to care? Or are we facilitating their way to leave? And so what this election is about is creating a solid foundation. There will be no success without a well-trained, educated, skilled workforce, And no matter how well and trained they are, if they're not healthy, they're not going to be at work every day because they're sick. They're having something to act up because they can't get that issue addressed, which goes to our issue on health care. Now, I have 12 opponents. Now, you ought to sit through one of our forums because it don't matter because they all say the same thing pretty much every moment. Because they haven't rehearsed. They don't care about saying anything that actually triggers people here locally to think that, man, we can do better with this person. I am the only candidate in this race that is talking about expanding educational opportunities for children and adults. You have not heard it yet. I am the only person that's talking about workforce development and any real plan that talks about utilizing our junior colleges and making sure that people, when they graduate from these schools, have actual choices to stay here. You could just be a student that wants to be a teacher here locally. And you got to choose between making $20-some thousand or 40 and 50 going somewhere else. That's a no-brainer to me.
Yes.
That's 2 to 1. Now, 20 and 25, okay, they might not want to move for that. But when you choose between 20 grand and 40 grand, I don't know anyone in this room who wouldn't take that. And so we talk about someone who wants more, aspires to have more, and we have to make sure we create an environment to facilitate that. Now, we have a lady who's in this race. She's a state senator. And if you read the paper today, she said she wanted to make history.
I did.
But at the same time, you don't hear that sister talking about no women's rights. You don't hear her talking about equal pay for women. You don't hear, they asked us a question last week in our debate. They said, well, first of all, they asked us something, we had to have a paddle with yes or no on it. So it wasn't even a real answer or question session. So you just flip your wrist, okay? And half of them was looking down to see what the other one was saying, and it was okay to have an answer. Now, I almost got carpal tunnel waving that thing so much against them. But the point is, here she is talking about being history and don't even want to represent that community that she's saying will be historic for her to represent. She's not talking about equal pay for women. She's not keeping clinics open and funded. She's most definitely not talking about expanding medical clinics so people have more service. What good are people to have affordable care packages when the hospital's not even accepting them? So you can afford one, but you still ain't got no access. One of my opponents is an ER doctor. And he says, I want to repair and fix the doctor-patient relationship. And I'm like, what patients does the ER doctor have? Emergency patients. So you don't know nothing about improving that. Improving his doctor-patient relationship would mean less people going to the emergency room. And so we would not have to fight a crazy governor blocking our ability to bring that money down, blocking our ability to open up more clinics, blocking our ability to hire more nurse practitioners. Keep these young ladies who are graduating from MUW, from these junior colleges, trained and prepared to work here. But then they graduate and they say, man, I'll make 60 grand if I go to Atlanta. If I stay here, I might make 20 if they hire me. If they hire me. So y'all tell me where that's a hard decision. They getting up out of here.
You're right.
So how do we create a better environment? Well, one, make our people feel appreciated for being here in the first place. Create equitable pay for women. Again, we're talking about women who also happen to now be running a significant, if not majority, of our households solely. And so, again, we got to break that whole system of failure, because that's what it is. We keep wanting to throw shingles and talk about what we're going to do by opening a Walmart or McDonald's. That's not economic development. So they asked one of my opponents last week, well, how do you feel about Barack Obama opening up trade talk with Cuba? And what do you think that means for Mississippi? And he starts talking about, well, you know, I served in the military, and I want to make sure the military has support and backing. And I'm thinking to myself, what they got to do with trade? The question was about, what are you going to do for trade? And so when people say, how are we going to create jobs here? That's the time to answer that. If we open up trade with another country, I want to look at what their deficit is. I want to look at what supplies they need so we can open it up here and provide it overseas. That's called exporting last time I checked. But apparently they don't teach that in law school. So at the end of the day, he can't talk about it. So he's going to talk about military stuff and hope people just say, yeah, that sounds good. But the truth of the matter is he has no agenda. And they all get faced with questions like that on the regular. And all they can say is, I hate Obama. I hope Hillary Clinton not president. I hate Affordable Care Act. Oh, excuse me, they'll never call it Affordable Care Act. It's got to be Obamacare, despite the fact that it is not written on anything in the U.S. Congress. Okay? So it's an insult. And what we're trying to do here is actually move forward an agenda that's going to actually be positive, that's going to talk about investments, that's going to talk about the future for this district. I am the only candidate that is talking about that. But the paper's not going to tell you that. they're going to say 13 candidates showed up tonight and they all shared their views on their candidacy, and they'll give us one